We need one more member to hit quorum.
Bill, you should have a prompt to promote yourself to panelist.
Oh, that almost happened to me before too, Stefan. I think
Yeah.
doesn't it have something to do with when you do that update?
Yep, it's the update. Usually at the beginning of the month. There we go.
Seventh, 2023 Transportation Commission meeting to order. Stefan, if you could please read the instructions.
Yep. All right, welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. We do not have any members of the public wishing to speak tonight, so Chair Kovich, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Stefan. Aiden, if you could call a roll, please.
Sure. Chris Mateo.
He's excused tonight.
And Kovich.
Here.
Denise Jess, who's logging on but not on yet.
Okay.
Bill Bremer.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
We can hear you, we can see you, but not hear you, Robbie. Okay, she's here.
Patricia Bennett.
Here.
Bridget Brown. Who I don't see. Harold Cleams.
Harold texted me that he's updating his Zoom and he'll be on soon.
Okay.
Yeah, not an uncommon problem when we hit those Zoom updates.
And Darren Wozniewski.
Present.
Okay, thanks so much. So Darren, you and Harold will be able to vote tonight. So we should be good in that regard. Did everybody have an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from the last meeting? Bill?
There's one sentence that didn't get completed. And I can't remember which item it was. It just kind of leaves you hanging.
Can you
Okay.
help us out with where that was?
I don't have the agenda or the minutes in front of me. I think it was about halfway down on the agenda.
I thought I read through it and I didn't see what you're talking about, but I might have read too fast. Oh, here. Was it planning to hold the 6-7 TC meeting with the original TC body still?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that he just meant that it would still be with the TC body, so it maybe
Okay.
wasn't as
Okay, just-
grammatically well worded as possible, but I
just put a
think,
period. Just put a period and it's fine.
oh, okay, well, we'll add a
Then
period.
I'll recommend approval.
Okay, there's a motion as slightly amended. How does that a second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Other than what we've already discussed? Okay, I'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. And we don't have any public comment, correct?
That's correct.
Any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, seeing none. And it looks like we have Denise. And it looks like we have Harold. And Harold, you're voting tonight. Are you and Darren both? So, all right. Looks like we're just missing Bridget. Okay. All right. So, first up, we have the consent agenda. We're removing item 6 from the consent agenda as Chris Pedakowski asked. He has something new he wants to show you, which on John Nolan Drive, which was in response to some feedback from TC members. So we're going to pull that off the consent agenda. So at this point in time, we have items 5 and 7 recommended for the consent agenda. I know we don't have anybody registered to speak based on what I heard from Stefan and from Aiden earlier. Does anybody wish for either of these items to be pulled off the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to take number 7 off.
Okay. All right, so we'll separate item 7. So that means that we just have item 5 on the consent agenda. Okay, item 5 is Legislature 78172. It's related to the city's application to the USDOT for Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant. So is there a motion on the consent agenda? Harold?
Move approval.
Okay. Robbie, is that a second?
Yes,
Okay. So just on item 5. So we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no. If so, Robbie, I'm going to take your hand down. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. Okay, so we are going to, Tom has another commitment at 6:30, the MPO policy board meeting. So we're going to go with item 2 next, and then we'll hit items 6 and 7 as they fall on the agenda. Okay, Tom, did you want to go ahead with 2?
Yes, so the mayor introduced the resident appointments for the Transportation Commission last night. And so there's always an introduction, and then the resident appointments have to be voted on at the next meeting, which will be June 20th, one vacancy was left in the resident appointments so that if possible, we could find a person who's willing to serve on two different boards. The alder appointments will be introduced on the 20th, and alder appointments are a little bit different in that they are introduced and then voted on the same evening. And so if everything goes according to plan, by the end of June 20th, there'll be a new transportation commission with one vacancy on it. I think what we will do is for the meeting on the 21st, we will probably coordinate with who we think will be the members of the Transportation Commission, and staff will determine the agenda. Okay, and then we'll send out invitations to those whom we think will be on the Transportation Commission, and then move forward in that respect. One thing to note is that, you know, this current council has kind of reviewed committee appointments a little bit more closely or in a different way than previous councils, and so, you know, there could be more discussion on it. But if we just go with what we think will happen, we'll have a new transportation commission on the 21st.
So Tom, that means the mayor would have to sign the council proceedings on the 21st in order for that to happen?
Yeah, I think she said she can do that, and she's
Okay.
been willing to do that. And so we're going to, it's a machine with all these cogs, and we have to,
Yeah, right, yeah.
we have to get it through. I think this will be good, particularly, I believe the new commission will have some new members and some current members. I think the mayor's office tried to, you know, the demographics and transportation modes were quite prescriptive, and so while the mayor was able to get a little bit of a loosening of those, she is trying to adhere to the spirit of that.
Mhm.
So that means that we'll have a different commission, and so there'll probably be a fair amount of education or bringing up to speed. You know, probably start off with the transit network redesign because we will have just experienced a week of that. But then complete green streets will move, you know, be in, and so we'll probably take a topic, you know, per meeting to provide just the commission the framework that you all really make decisions on, right? You think about it, you know, 3 out of the 4 alder appointments will be new, right? And they don't have any background to anything that's been done over the past, you know, 2 to 4 years, and so there's a fair amount of education that goes there, and there will be some new resident members as well. I will say, you know, whenever 2 committees gets condensed to 1 committee, right? You know, there's we can't, you know, we aren't able to fill the whole committee with the existing members, and then also because there were some new requirements that the mayor's office tried to honor, you know, that kind of changed things so well. But I do want to say, well, one, you know, we as staff, and actually I'm going to say the city of Madison, are grateful for the service of everyone that served not only on the TC but on the TPBB, which really is no more, you know, and you know, there's been, you know, as I've said, I think in 1 or 2 previous meetings, there's been some hard decisions that this transportation commission really came through and made the decision. You know, I think of things like on Lake Mendota Drive. I think of things like buses on State Street. You know, I think of the transit network redesign. You know, these are big changes, or some of them are small changes, but, you know, they're changes that had controversy where it makes it difficult to be a policymaker to make those decisions. And I'm just going to say, the Transportation Commission members did it. You know, they deliberated well, and made decisions, and so as our transportation network has grown and will be growing, you know, in the past 5 years and the coming 5 years, a lot of it's due to the effort. But then I'm also going to just say maybe decision-making compass that was provided by the TC. So thank you.
Thanks. And I see that Tom Wilson is on with us tonight. So thanks to maybe offer those same thanks to the TPPB and those, I think, Tom, you're the only TPPB member. Oh, Alder Harrington McKinney is on here as well. So she was on the Transportation Policy and Planning Board as well, because there was an amazing amount of policies were approved and put in place in the last year or so. Under your leadership, quite a lot was, quite a lot was accomplished.
Yeah.
So, comments or questions? I offer my personal thanks to everybody on TC, because it's, we have a very engaged group of people who are always prepared and always ask excellent questions and generate really good discussion. So I think that just makes for better decisions. And while I have the opportunity, I want to especially thank everybody for the extra time that you put in when we did the training, the leadership training. That was over and above our TC meetings and required some quite a bit of work. And so the work that we did on equity and inclusion at the Transportation Commission, I think, was really excellent and really contributed, I think, to the decisions that we've made. And Tom, you were a part of that as well. So thanks so much for helping make that happen. So comments or questions for Tom? And if there's no objection, I would invite Tom Wilson to participate in the discussion if you'd like. So any objections from anybody? He's done the same for me when I went to TPPB meetings. So I'd like to offer him that same opportunity. So comments or questions from anybody? Okay, Tom, a lot of organizations going to have to happen pretty quickly. So, Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just for curiosity, Tom, you had said that the one vacancy, what is that a specific requirement on that vacancy, or?
Yeah, it has to be a member of the BPW and the Transportation Commission.
Great, thank you. I was just curious.
Other comments or questions for Tom? Okay, thanks much, Tom. All right, and thanks again to everybody. Okay, next we have approval of transportation demand management fees. Stephanie.
Thank you. So this resolution is to establish a fee structure for the new transportation demand management program that will go into effect on June 16th, which is next week. Sorry, can I share my screen? Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we did was we looked at some of the other fees that are currently part of the planning process for developers, and we wanted to create something that was kind of in line with those fees. We didn't want to make it too burdensome on the developer, but enough where it would kind of force the developers to look at ways that they can earn points for the transportation demand management program. So I know whether it be bike parking or bus passes. And it was based off of the fees are based off of the number of dwelling units and parking stalls. So what we came up with was for the initial application fee, it's $100 across the board for any size development. And then it's $15 per each mitigation point. In addition, there's also a biannual recertification fee with no base application fee. Again, it's just a $10 mitigation point. So some of the examples are for the initial fee of $100. If they have 12 points, it would be times $15 per point. It's $280 for the initial fee. So looking at something that is affordable, yet also stresses the importance of the program. And then for a larger development, the fee would go up. And so the second one was, 32 points. It would get them to $580 for that initial fee. And the goal of the program is that it's eventually will be self-funded after 5 years. So we're really looking, we have one person in the position. So we're looking to be able to fund that position off of this program. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, comments or questions for Stephanie? Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, for walking through this. I think this all makes sense. The only thing I was wondering about, so for the factor that takes into account the parking spot per unit ratio, like at what point in the application process do you determine that, or what happens? For example, if a developer proposes, say, 1 spot per unit, then realizes that they would require 19 mitigation points because they have a high medium building, and they figure out, if we cut 20 parking spots, we actually get to the lower level, and therefore the fee would change.
So it's my understanding, and Tom might be able to help with this, but this will go through be part of the initial application process for a development. So I suppose if they changed it, then that would be part of the approved application. I'll have Tom chime in. I might not know this process very well.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so they'll probably be looking through the worksheet before they submit. And if they were planning on 80 spots and they look at the sheet and they instead do 60 spots, that's exactly what we want, right? The less parking that's provided, studies show the fewer trips that development will generate. And so that's one reason why the whole thing is hinged on that parking ratio. If it becomes let's say a mid-process decision where they decide to go from 80 to 60 midway through the process, I think that you'd have to submit new drawings, and it would have to be a revised application that's just going through the approval process.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, that development cost, that seems relatively modest to begin with, so we don't have to worry about that level of detail. Yeah, thanks for answering that.
And I should note, our goal is to review the fees, after a year and see where they line up, so we can make adjustments as needed. Because this is a brand new program, so we're not sure what the first year will look like. So we want that ability to be able to make adjustments on it.
Okay, and since those fees can be adjusted and approved just by the Transportation Commission, that process should be fairly streamlined, Stephanie. So, other comments or questions for Stephanie? Okay, we need a motion to approve the resolution. Robbie?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mute. Move approval.
Okay, thanks. And Darren, is that a second?
It is. I second it.
Okay. Robbie, did you want to speak to the motion?
Not really. I mean, I guess I would just say that I'm glad that this program will be, I mean, they're aiming for it to be self-supporting with developer fees. I think that's kind of best practices across the country. And so hopefully that'll work out. So bravo.
Great. Thanks. And any further discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. All right, thanks so much, Stephanie. Okay. Next, we have item 4, which is repealing and recreating section 1623 of the Madison General Ordinances. So who's going to take the lead on that? Are you taking the lead on that, or Chris, or who's
Yeah, I think
is that-
I can take the lead on that. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Sure.
I did provide a brief memo. If you remember, we adopted, the Complete Green Streets Guide, early in the year. And there actually is, there's so many good things to say about that. But one thing it didn't do is we weren't able to change our subdivision ordinance because the subdivision ordinance was like 60 pages and there were a lot of other things associated with land use approval process that planning department wanted changes to. So instead, we made changes to the MGO 33 as far as powers and duties, and we said that this year we would deal with MGO 1623. If you remember, just a couple meetings ago, the Transportation Commission was reviewing the geometry for a street just off of Milwaukee Street, east of the interchange, right? And the Transportation Commission wanted to have a narrower typical section from face of curb to face of curb. Yet legally, that condition couldn't have been imposed, right? Because our subdivision ordinance is very prescriptive, saying if your right of way is a certain width, then your face of curb to face of curb dimension has to be a certain width. I'm going to say over the years, that's led to streets that are kind of almost broken when they open because they're so wide they just encourage quite a bit of speeding. So if we're to summarize, the 50-page revision that's being done is it adds the complete green street street types and the definitions, and helps to classify them as arterials, collectors, or local streets, which was needed kind of to be consistent with some of the state requirements that we have. It removed the required street widths and right-of-way widths. It requires that the street type as identified in the current Complete Green Streets Guide be identified in the subdivision plat. States that the dedicated right-of-way should be listed on the plat consistent with the street type. But note that if they dedicate, let's say they dedicate 100 feet, that does not mandate that they put in a 50-foot face of curb to face of curb. That is left up to the typology that's associated in our policy. Under the design standards, these two paragraphs probably are the most pertinent. Under the design standards, it says complete green streets. It states the most current complete green streets guide shall be used to develop street type width and allocation of space between transportation modes. The tables guide shall be used to develop typical sections, travel way width, and total right of way width. For any subdivision or land division that proposes to deviate from the design standards in the guide, the Plan Commission shall consider the recommendations of the Transportation Commission before taking action on each subdivision and or land division. So I think the state statute gives the Plan Commission final authority. So we couldn't make it the Transportation Commission per se having the final authority, but this kind of codifies that they're supposed to consider what the Transportation Commission says. And then under public streets, bikeways, and walkways, it says, public walkways, bikeways, paths, or sidewalks shall be installed within all public right-of-ways and public easements as required by the most current version of the Complete Streets Guide, unless a variance is granted by the Transportation Commission. The location of the public walkways, bikeways, and paths may be modified to protect and preserve significant trees. So, if you look through the 50 pages, these are kind of some of the nuggets that were pulled out so that you can see what the intent of the ordinance revision is.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Comments or questions? There was a lot to review here. I know I read through quite a bit of it, and it's a lot to absorb. Harold, go ahead.
Yes, it's a lot, and I did try to go through the whole thing. And it seems like, the complete green streets piece of it seems to be one of the major areas of change, but it also seems there's a whole bunch of other little revisions. Is that correct?
Yes, I think there were many. This ordinance lives kind of in the planning department, right? And it could be 30 or 40 years old, and so I think the planning department it was in their work plan to modify this over the next couple of years, but since we wanted to do it, we wanted to accelerate the revision, then they really jumped in and they said, all right, well, let's have this thing reflect the way the process is currently working. And so, they have a certain process that's pretty regimented and organized, but it's not exactly consistent with the way the ordinance reads. And so they felt like they wanted to just revise it so that it was consistent. Yeah, so they, that was, I think they viewed it as an opportunity for us. I think the transportation department wanted it to occur quickly because there are subdivisions that are trying to get in under the old ordinance and build wider streets. And we wanted to kind of, moderate that opportunity because we don't necessarily want wide streets. And so for the Transportation Commission, our transportation department, we wanted this to occur sooner. The planning department said, oh, this is so much work. But they really stepped to the plate, really did went through it, changed it, and got the revisions that they felt like they needed into the ordinance.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I did pick up on a couple little pieces throughout the text of the actual ordinance. If you go to, sorry, too many things open here. Page 8 and 9, mostly page 9. There's some language about when there's disagreement between an adopted plan or the street type map regarding the specific requirements and so on. I was trying to understand what that means.
Yeah. How about I'll have to, so kind of the development of this ordinance, we started with a markup. We sent it to planning. They did a markup, then I went to fire, then I went to the attorney's office, then I went back to planning, I went back to us, and so I'm pretty familiar with what we've sent them twice, but I'm not, fully familiar with
You make that bigger, Tom? That's good. Thank you.
Harold, you'll
Page 8, did you say, Harold?
Yeah, that last, and I looked at the marked up version, so the page numbers may not, yeah, I think it's 2C1. Whenever
Yeah.
puzzle and so on.
so I think what
It's
you're
disagreement. Yeah.
referring to right here.
Right.
When
And
there's a disagreement between an adopted plan or a street type map regarding the specific requirements for a street, the recommendations of the most recently adopted plan guide or map should abide the location, configuration, and width of a street. So why don't we just start with that, right?
Right.
Yeah, so if let's say there's let's say a small area plan, is supposed to reference the complete green streets before they put anything in there. And we've had quite a few interactions with the plan department saying, well, you can't put in things that are contrary to the complete green streets, right? However, let's say our typology, our street type map becomes out of date. It's not used for 6 years. No one looks at it or changes it, right? And a small area plan says, well, even though in complete green streets it's listed as a parkway, we feel like the land use context has changed and it should be something else. Well, and they put it should be something else. Then that would control, because that would be a more recent document, right? So there's supposed to be consistency, but if complete green streets, if we don't do our job and we fall out of date, then the more recent plan would control.
Okay, I figured that was the meaning. And I think, yeah, that sounds fine, because I guess it can go in the direction of if the complete green streets guide is out of date, or if one of the area plans is out of date and proposes something that's contrary to complete
Yeah.
green streets.
Yeah. So on the other hand, we have a lot of special area plans that this is superseding, right? And so now this is an overlay on top of them saying, no, you have to kind of fit into one of these categories.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for confirming what I thought was the case.
Can I just, Harold, can I just throw something out there?
Sure.
Tom, what you had in your memo, the two places where the Transportation Commission would weigh in, one to offer information to the Plan Commission, and the other, where, just TC approval is required. So if there's a variance from complete green streets, the TC would need to get involved, Harold. So there's like a backstop. And if there's Tom, if it's a situation like you described and something needs to be adjusted, TC is the group that's authorized to make changes to the complete green streets guide. So it should all circle around, and TC would need to get involved, and then the discussion could occur, and it may end up resulting in a change to the complete green streets guide. So I think, Tom, this sort of ties it together, doesn't it?
Yeah, we hope so. And we hope that we keep everything current, right? But just to provide an example, Madison in Motion, when was the last time anyone looked at Madison in Motion? That's 5 years old. And yet it's, still currently our kind of transportation plan. And so we don't want this to be like that, but I'm giving an example of how sometimes, we forget that we did plans, 4 or 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
Renee
Renee has her
might be
hand up
correcting
too.
me. Yeah. Are you going to correct me, Renee?
I'm not going to correct you, although I did look at the Madison in Motion plan yesterday. So
Oh,
I guess
right.
some weird person out there is looking at it still.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this is, as was said, it's a fail safe. Like the whole idea is that these things are working together. And as we're updating plans, the other, like completing Green Streets is marching along with it. You're seeing these area plans, but it is nice to have a fail safe if at some point there's like a disconnect between all of these plans, and then you're like, well, which street type is this, right? And it's like, okay, what was the latest? But the whole idea is that we're working in concert together, but you kind of like to have a plan for if that falls apart to keep things rolling.
Right, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Renee. Go ahead, Harold.
So the other piece is on top of page 33, and now I'm looking at the non-marked up version, so we should be on the same pages. It's about the word pedestrian way. So there's the provision that pedestrian way shall comply with the maximum grades allowed by ADA. And I'm trying to figure out what is the difference between a walkway and the pedestrian way. And I think this is the only place where pedestrian way is being used. And I think there might be something in state statute, like the whole eminent domain where they talk about pedestrian way. So I just want to understand what a pedestrian way is and how it's different from a walkway or sidewalk.
Did I tell you what the judge said? Right. I don't. I don't know if there's a difference. I do know that there was a recent court case in Egg Harbor where there was quite a nuance between sidewalk and pedestrian way, and how, if I remember correctly, Egg Harbor said we constructed a sidewalk, not a pedestrian way. So they were trying to get away from the prohibition of eminent domain, and I think the judge said they're the same. A sidewalk and a pedestrian way are the same. So I don't know why that was made differently. Renee, maybe you have more insight.
I don't. I mean, it is something that's used in state statute, so I'm not sure why the attorneys felt like using the word pedestrian way in this location, but it does have a certain state definition, which apparently now isn't that different anymore according to the courts. But
Okay. I mean, maybe just make sure that whatever you put in there is consistent and you use the terms that you want to use, because yeah, as I said, this seems to be the only place where that shows up, and everywhere else it's walkways. So, and then sidewalk, I can see how that's a different thing. All right, and then on the same page, a little bit further down, there is language about collector and arterial streets should be done according to AASHTO. And the design speed shall generally be 5 miles per hour over the anticipated speed limits, which rang my Vision Zero bells, where we create a design speed that encourages people to go over the speed limit.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't ring your bell. So if we have if we have if we design a roadway with a posted speed of 25 miles an hour, providing a horizontal curve that allows 30 miles an hour, is a pretty standard thing. So I don't, that, to me, that doesn't concern me, because as an engineer, I've always assumed that I design for 5 miles over what is anticipated to be posted. for me, a question is, why are we designing for 35 miles an hour when we could be designing for, 25 miles an hour? I'm kind of more maybe in that category. Yeah, I don't.
All right.
Yeah, I don't. I can't think of a arterial that we would design with a speed limit over 35 miles an hour. But there could be different people sitting in different chairs, 10 years from now. So I can understand your point.
It looks
All right.
like Yang might have a comment there, Tom. Go ahead, Yang.
Yeah, I just want to second, Tom, on some of the comments. I think, traditionally, engineers are trained to design, like typically 5, sometimes even 10 miles over the posted speed limit. The idea is that, people are going to drive a little bit faster. So you need to design a facility that's kind of accommodating that. It's kind of forgiving that when people drive faster. But I think some of us are thinking differently now. Whether that's actually achieve the safety results that's intended. When you design something that's a bit faster than post speed, people actually drive faster. People may actually run into more issues. I think there's some debate going on. But I think I'm pretty sure from what I have seen on some of our streets, I'm leaning towards that. If we post as 25 miles per hour, we should design the facility at 25 miles per hour, so that we can make the things as tight as possible, so that people actually will drive slower. There might be situations that might warrant I would say the previous practice or a common practice in the industry. But I think the vast majority of the cases that I have seen right now, I really see the benefits actually designing at a lower speed, so we can realize many of the other benefits. So I think those benefits will outweigh the benefits of be forgiving to someone who happen to drive faster. So that's just want to share my thoughts on that. That's a great question.
All right, thanks. That's all I had in terms of questions.
Thank you, Tom and Renee and Yang and Harold. Other comments or questions? There was a lot of material here to digest, but certainly important for, I think, the Transportation Commission to see it with the Complete Green Streets changes that are incorporated. Is there any additional questions for staff? Okay, we would need a motion to approve this. Harold?
So moved.
Is there a Robbie? That's a second.
Yep.
Harold, did you wish to speak to your motion, Harold?
Just very briefly, I mean, yeah, we have encountered situation where this has been a problem where PC wanted to design safer streets in new subdivisions, and we could not because the ordinance was not allowing us to do so. So this is great that we have been able to. I mean, I see how complicated it is, how much text needed to be updated. So it's good that it's coming through, and some of the things that I've pointed out are at the level of detail. Maybe we can fix that at some future point. The priority is to get this adopted, because I mean, subdivisions keep getting built, new roads keep getting built, and so we want to make sure that they are as safe as possible in the spirit of the Complete Green Streets Guide. Thanks.
Thanks. Discussion. Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, that motion is carried. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks for reading through all of those many, many, many pages, everybody. Okay, we approved 5 on the consent agenda, so we are now moving on to 6, which is John Nolan Drive. So Chris and Aaron?
Hi, everyone. Chris Pedikowski with City Engineering. Back with your favorite project that we keep giving updates on, John Nolan Drive. Excuse me. So what we are here for today is to approve the geometry, which gives us kind of guidance on a preferred alternative and allows us to start working on the final design. We've had 2 PIMs, 2 community surveys, I think 4 touch points with the Transportation Commission. So we were at a point where we thought we were ready. And we just recently met with you as recently as last meeting. So I did ask to pull it off the consent agenda because we did just in the past couple of days make a few tweaks to the design based on your input last meeting that I wanted to point out. And since the agenda had already been posted, I thought we should point that out. So I'm going to share my screen and we can go through it real quick. So I'll start. So the project again is from just shy of Lakeside Drive through the North Shore Drive intersection. Includes the 6 bridges on the causeway as well as the pavement on the causeway. Our cross section is we tightened the cross section and pushed it towards the railroad to provide more space for the ped and bike facilities and the future waterfront master plan efforts. It includes 1 11-foot lane, 1 10-foot lane, curb and gutter on both sides, a curbed median, 8 feet wide. Again, two 10 and 11-foot lanes, and then our 10-foot multi-use path and 6-foot pedestrian path. I'll note that, in general, we kind of aligned the bike path to be more straight and kind of parallel to the roadway. And in the pedestrian path, we suggested some variations to that and some gentle curves. We fully expect that through the coordination with the Lake Monona waterfront plan, that sidewalk facility will probably be tweaked and may potentially be a part of their project instead of the road project. So that's a little to be determined, but our analysis suggested that we wanted a separate facility for peds and bikes, and that's kind of where we lined that up. As far as the bridges goes, we continue that geometry across the bridges with the 10-11-foot lane and the median, and then we are showing a separated bridge structure which would have parapets similar to the roadway bridge, so that I think we discussed before, we wouldn't have any sight line issues, right? The parapets would be a normal standard height where the bikes, peds, and vehicles could see over. So it wouldn't be a truss structure. That cross section continues throughout the causeway and the 2 other bridge sections. I'll just zoom through those. And then we get to the North Shore Drive intersection. So this is again showing that alternative 2 configuration that we discussed last time. Still some final design details to work out, but what we're kind of committing here to is this geometry, this configuration. And so one of the things that was tweaked since the agenda was posted was we made the island bigger. based on the feedback from the committee that, folks were preferring all two, but want to make sure that the island's done correctly and effectively. So we took a look at the effective width of that island. You can see the old crosswalk width here was about 9 feet, and we are widening that out to 19 feet. So providing a lot more space for side-by-side users to get through there. And measured the effective area is increasing from about 500 square feet to about 600 square feet. So this is a kind of a delicate balance, right? Because we wanted to tighten this curve and slow down those right turns. And the tighter you make that curve, the smaller the island is. So we thought this was a good balance, but certainly if there's feedback that we need to make it bigger yet, we can do that. It just comes at the cost of spreading this right turn lane a little more towards John Nolan. We're showing separated ped and bike crosswalks here, based on feedback. Again, that could potentially change to like an all green kind of situation. That's kind of what we're showing based on the feedback. Since the agenda was posted, we did change this 11-foot left turn lane to a 10-foot left turn lane to tighten that up. And then these North Shore Drive currently has 12-foot lanes, and we are rebuilding the approaches. We changed that to 11s. I think in our final design, we still want to try to see if we can make this island bigger. But again, we're at this. We're proposing this kind of configuration, and we can still make some minor tweaks to the final design. Important piece of this puzzle is the inclusion of this new path on the I'll say the west side of North Shore, or west and north side of West North Shore and John Nolan. This is a path that does not exist currently today, and we're showing it extending to the Broome Street where the sidewalk ends there, and up to the Bassett Street Railroad crossing, and then down to Bedford Street. I also just kind of wanted to point out that we now have all the community survey information posted on the website. A lot of that was kind of discussed before. In most cases, the community survey and the staff recommendations align, with the exception of that Alt4, Alt2. And then we also have the small group focus group results on that on the website as well, and those all similarly seem to align with the staff recommendations as well. So I know we've talked about this a lot, so I will probably stop at this point and then ask if folks have questions.
Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. Chris, could you show the bridges again, the cross section of the bridges?
You bet.
Did I see is it 26 feet with the 11 and 10 lanes?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So then the remainder is buffer space between the
Little shoulder space.
bridge. Yeah, for the bridge rail. Yeah.
And
yeah. I don't want to call it a shoulder. I call it a buffer. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shoulder space. Yeah, so that is below the recommendation for I believe we were requesting, by doing this, we're requesting WISDOT to, I think, take 3 feet out of each side of the shoulder, or 3 or 4 feet. It might be, to tighten that cross section up. And,
Yeah. That will definitely slow traffic down. I think that'll be one of the points where traffic will, the narrowing of the bridges. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you had what you had for a buffer.
Sure.
That's good. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. Chris, could you, going back to North Shore Drive and that intersection there, could you help, you mentioned that you took the travel lanes down from 12 feet to 11 feet. Is there a reason why you couldn't take them to 10?
We could probably do maybe a 10 and 11. We do have to keep 11 for this is a state highway 151 for the trucks, but we could consider maybe a 10 and 11. Yep.
I'm just always a fan of the narrowest lanes we can possibly get, just kind of help slow
Yes.
traffic down.
Yep. Let me write that down.
Okay, thanks. Is that all you had, Darren?
It is. Thank you, Ann.
Okay, Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions. First of all, the 10-foot path that run in parallel to John Nolan, is that as wide as we can get that path? I mean, I know that we're going to have a separate pedestrian path, but with the volume of traffic, that does seem the bare minimum, I guess I would say. So I'm wondering if maybe I'm wrong. Maybe our paths are standard 10 feet, but it just seems that with the volume of traffic, we might need a little more space there. And if it was possible to get another foot or two.
It certainly is possible. We did one of our cross sections was like a 14-foot cross section, but I think we felt by providing that separate space for the pedestrian and still trying to keep in mind of overall trying to reduce our pavement widths in general, we thought that having the 10 feet just for the bikes and then having 6 feet for the peds could work here. But it could be bigger. Yeah, it's possible. It just takes more green space.
I was going to say, I realize it's a trade-off between green and pavement. But I am just worried that with the number of bicyclists and also, it certainly doesn't allow people to ride side by side, and even passing maneuvers can be a little tight there. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I do realize that it's a trade-off. So maybe I can also hear what other people on the committee have to say about that. But I think 10 feet might be kind of squeezing this area. I do have a couple other questions though. So I'll just throw that out
Renee
there.
might want to weigh in on that. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Renee, go ahead.
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, definitely, I mean, I know what Robbie's saying is, when you have a high volume of people there, even when you just take pedestrians out, it can be tight with the different speeds. I think we're trying to balance having some green space, having space for trees to make it a more pleasant walking and biking environment. So I think it's a good discussion for the committee to have, is like, what is that balance and what is the right space? Because obviously we want to grow the number of people riding as well. So, and it takes some space to do that, but also it's kind of, you want to have some trees to make that riding experience more pleasant. So yeah, we've been trying to find that right balance in this whole process too.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, our forester was asking if we could make more space for the big canopy trees just this morning. So so we had the opposite side.
Yeah. Okay, well, so, going back to our favorite intersection at North Shore, I just had a couple of quick questions about that. At the last discussion, did I hear that people coming from Brittingham Park or from the lakeside would be able to make the full transition in one cycle without standing on the island? Ideally, that the lights will be timed so that they'll be able to get all the way across without having to stop on the island?
That is Gretchen here?
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay,
Chris, can I share my screen?
you bet.
Hey, Gretchen.
Hi, I am going to show. I'm looking for my screen. This is the right one. Are you able to see the PDF?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so this is a sequence of how it would look like for pedestrians and people riding bikes, crossing from the park to the lake or from the lake to the park. So these are going to be the different times during the cycle where pedestrians and bikes would get either a walk or a green for the bikes to move from the corner to the island and from the island to cross John Nolan. This is the South Crosswalk. So there are multiple opportunities for making the crossing from the corner from the park to that bigger island. And then there is one point during the cycle where both pedestrians and bikes will be able to make that full crossing in just one phase. But yes, we do have multiple opportunities to have people go in to get to and from that Port Chuck Island and to cross back to the corner where the park is or to the lakeside. And this is the South Crossing. And we have the same for the West Crosswalk. So this is the Newark Crosswalk. So we have the opportunity for people to get into the islands, and then they would be able to make that crossing across North Shore, and then again to be able to get out of the islands. And later in the cycle, we should be able to provide opportunity for people if they either for some reason got stuck on the island and weren't able to get out, or if they're in the corner and want to be able to move to the island. So there will be multiple opportunities. In this section though, we do provide the walk, and then from the corners to the islands, and then from island to island there would be a walk. So it would be a nice sequence, but there would be some waiting in those islands.
Right.
It won't be a long time, but the timing where, for example, here the walk is green, so you would go to the island and then be able to cross North Shore. The time where that walk is going to be on is going to be longer than what it will take you to get across there. So there will be some waiting at the island before you will be able to get another green or a walk to complete that crossing and get to the other side.
Okay, so I don't know whether this West Crosswalk is going to get as much traffic as the one coming from Brittingham, but my concern is that the cycles are going to be fairly long, and I'm wondering how long out of that long cycle will be the time when you can get all the way across without stopping on the island.
Right. So currently the full cycle is the longest one that we have is 110 seconds.
Right.
So almost 2 minutes.
Right.
And if I did some some timing to see adjusting it to what the future would be. But still maintaining that full cycle because we still have to coordinate with Brew that's really close by. So I here in the south crosswalk, I would say that this walk right here, you wouldn't be waiting much.
I'm
between here.
interested in the third panel.
In
That
here,
one. Yes.
that one, this one right here.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, this one should be pretty good and easy to make this crossing. So this is the south crosswalk.
That's not my question. That's not my
Uh-huh.
question. My question is, out of that 120 seconds, how long is it that you will be able to get a full walk both directions?
Oh, okay,
all the
okay,
way
okay.
across?
Got it. Okay, so we have here, they have it as phase 7. So that is crossing 2 and 1 green, the full. So it would be at least 36 seconds. So
Okay.
it should be enough for easily for a bike to be able to get across. And for the pedestrians right here, I think according to the timing that they have, it would be phase 7 and 4, and I'm just double checking with another file that they have that actually has the timing. So I want to make sure I give you the right information. And this is, yeah, so if I do this math real quick, yes, it should be about, for that full crossing, it should be about 38 seconds. So it should be enough according to this map that they have right here. It should be enough for a pedestrian to be able to get from one side to the other, and that little quadrant, this third one that we're showing right here.
Right. So let me explain why I'm asking. Because my question is not so much, are people going to be able to make the crossing physically? That's not the issue. The issue is, how long are people going to be standing on the island because they don't have a green in both directions? This gets back to the size of the island and the capacity of the island. Because again, we are going to be seeing a lot more people biking. We already see a lot of people. And I am concerned about the capacity of the island when people do not have a walk going both directions. That's why I'm asking, out of the whole cycle, how long people are going to be only able to get partway across.
Okay.
So it's a capacity of the island issue, not a can you physically get across once you get a double green.
Yeah, and I see that. I mean, that would be an issue if since we have so many opportunities for people to get into the island, we are opening that gap of where more people would be able to crowd the island during more times during the cycle than just giving them one option to just cross here and no more options. But the more options we do provide to be able to get in and out, we're also providing more time to fill up those islands. That is correct. Yes.
Right. But I know that I can tell you that I blow right past the island. I don't even get onto the island if I can make it coming from the lakeside, because it's too crowded. It's just too crowded right now. So if I see that nobody's coming through that slip lane, I will go around the nose of the island and not even get onto the island because there's just too many people. So I'm just sort of bringing this up when we're rebuilding, that I don't want people hanging out into either the slip lane or trying to run the stale green because there's no space for them to stand on the island. So this gets back to Chris's concerns about the size of the island. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there that I think we're still going to have an issue. That's my concern.
Did the increase in the size of the island help that at all, Robbie?
Well, any increase in the size of the island is going to help, but I mean, yes, the increase that we've already seen, yes, it helped, but it's still too crowded. I mean, especially because this is not a straight crossing. For instance, the Monroe Regent crossing is much more a straight line. And when we're rebuilding this, we are making people make close to a 90-degree turn on the island to get across from Brittingham Park to the lake or the other way around. So that means you've got people with larger bikes that also need that turning radius to get across. They're going to be taking up space. There's people, bunch of people like crowding on the island, and they're all trying to like get across and get in and out of the crosswalk. I do think that expanding the size of the curb cut is going to make a big difference. I think that's a very good change because that will give people more space so that they can pass each other. Right now, you really can't pass each other in the curb cut. I mean, going opposite direction. So I'm just throwing it out there that I think we still may be having some capacity problems for non-motorized transportation in this quadrant. So I have one other comment, and then you guys can chat about that, what I brought up. And then
can we hang on for 1 second? Aaron, did you have an answer to Robbie's question?
Yeah, it may not be a direct answer, but I just want to, I think there's one other important factor to consider. It's not only just the size of the island, but it's also the distance across John Nolan Drive. And if Chris could pull up the drawing again, you'll notice how much shorter it is to go from one side of the island to the other side of the street. And that also makes that crossing much more efficient and safer because you're no longer in a vehicle pathway. Just going to see kind of where the crossing would be today versus how it is proposed. Just one more factor to consider, because when you make that distance shorter, not as many people will need to stop in the island because they'll be able to get across they'll be able to complete that crossing in one complete maneuver.
Right.
The old distance is from these gray lines here, right? And then the newer distance is this shorter stretch is what Aaron's getting at.
Okay. I mean, I have trouble figuring out how it's going to work when just looking at geometric. It's just me not being able to sort of picture what it's going to feel like. But I'm just bringing this up because I think crowding on the approaches, even people turning off the path and waiting to cross at the light, having a staging area for them on the lakeside as well. I mean, we kind of solved that when at Blair, but that was a huge issue at Blair as well. So, we just don't want people waiting in the flow of traffic, whether that traffic be other bicyclists or cars.
Yeah, Robbie, I see Yang has his hand up. Yang, did you have some comments here?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think this is a very good discussion. We already, have been discussing that we should, maximize the curb cut, as much as possible, even looking to increase that even further to, maximize the usable space in that area.
Mhm.
And another thing we can look into, I think Robbie's point of minimize the conflicts, between in the island, especially between the pedestrians and the bicyclists, so that they're not holding up each other. Is that we can look into kind of flip the markings for the pedestrians and for the bikes for the main crossing Island Drive, so that bikes all stay on one side for this crossing, and also for crossing the slip lane, and they don't have to cross paths with the pedestrians. So I think that's probably going to help with operation a little bit as well. I definitely think the tightening up the intersection, shortening the crossing distance will be a big help. And it's definitely not going to be perfect. And I think we're still going to see people, the bikes actually will not use the island. Maybe you should keep that in mind too, especially after we switch the location of the crosswalk and the crossing for bikes. I think there's probably more reason for us to look into accommodating that. So if there's plenty of time, the bikes can make it. Maybe they don't have to get on the island. They can just just go. So I think some of the details we can definitely look at it, and also for example, setting up bicycles in a better spot when they are waiting on the path by the lake. How to set them up better so they're not blocking the path traffic, and also maybe not crossing over there. We already discussed that we should look into that when we do the details, right? This is for the higher level geometrics. Those will be taken care of in the details. So it's not going to be perfect, but I think there are a few things that we can tweak as well to make things work a little bit better.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Just thought I wanted to get those things out there. There is a third thing that I wanted to mention, which I'd like to maybe borrow from a different intersection, and that is that the northbound Whitney Way, where it crosses the railroad track between University Avenue and the railroad track, they have the stop bar way back behind the railroad track. And I know that's because the Rail Commission is there and they don't want people stopping on the tracks outside their office. And so the stop bar is way far back from Old Middleton Road. And we've made that change here as well, which I think is great. I think that will discourage people doing a flying right against a red. But something else I noticed from that intersection on Whitney is that they have a traffic light at the stop bar that is much lower than a standard traffic light height. And I think that makes it more visible, the red light, to drivers. So just take a look at that. I noticed it on Google Street View, and the light it's not high up, it's like down low, so that it's more in the sight line of the motorist. And so that might be something we might consider for this as well. So I was going to share that with everybody, but I forgot to do that. Yeah, it's the southbound lane. Yep, right there. See how low that light is?
Wow, yeah.
And you can see how far back the stop bar is compared to the actual intersection.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that makes it more visible to the motorist.
So what I hear staff saying is all of these comments are helpful, that this high level geometrics we're talking about now will be refined, and all of the comments that people are making today will be helpful in making those refinements. Is that right, Yang and Renee and Gretchen and Chris?
Yes.
And Eric?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. Yeah, these are very helpful. Yeah.
okay. Is that all you had, Robbie?
That's all I have. Yep.
Okay, before we go on to the next person, Stefan, I see Alder Miadzi is over in the attendees. Can you move him over into a panelist?
Yep. Alder Miadzi, you should have a prompt to be promoted to panelist.
Thanks, Stefan. Darren, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. Robbie's questions on the light timing had just got me thinking. In planning out the timing of the light, what's the consideration given to people who move slower than a typical able-bodied 35-year-old, whether slower on their own feet or slower because they're rolling with a mobility device of some type? And it's recent experience I've had in La Crosse on Rose Street, and just getting caught in traffic with somebody on a scooter and a power wheelchair, that made me realize just how much slower they move. And as our population is getting older, and this is going to be a spot enjoyed by many, not just people on bicycles or the younger people who or anybody who could move, 2 to 3 miles an hour walking. What consideration is given to crossing for the slower movement of people?
Who wants to take that one?
I can start. So normally what we use is 3.5 feet per second to calculate how much time we need. But we do know that there are certain areas and locations, and sometimes we just know from feedback from the public where there are locations where more time is needed for some certain crossings. So we definitely take a look at that, and also we do that for signals, but also when we're evaluating crossings for schools, especially for the crossing guard studies that we do use a lower speed. So there are certain locations and for certain applications where we use a different speed to calculate how much time is needed. I don't know if Renee wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to kind of take into account, especially to places like this where there are more people, same with schools where even if people are able to move fast, you can't move fast in a group. And sometimes, yes, we do hear from the public. We'll get calls like, I'm not able to get across, and we can go out, kind of look and retime it to make sure that people are not getting trapped. But in an area like this, we're also considering even just the mass of people moving at a different speed than a typical intersection with fewer people.
Does that help, Darren?
Yeah, it helps. And we'll see when it's done and get feedback, I'm sure, and how
Okay.
people are using it.
Okay, thanks. Erin, you have your hand up. Did you have something else to say?
No, I do not.
Okay, all right. Well, just flip your hand down then. Go ahead, Harold.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to start with a higher level observation and followed by a question. So, I mean, a lot of the problems that we have talked about with light timing, with the size of the island, with the fact that now we have two crossings that have different light timing, which means maybe the people going in one direction can make it through, but not in the other direction, and those people might be in the way of the other people and all of that stuff. It certainly seems to be the case that all of that would not be an issue if it were a straight crossing. In other words, alternative 4. So that might have other problems. It probably will. We looked at some of the downsides, but I do want to point out that a lot of these things where we're saying like, oh yeah, we'll figure out the details, we'll tweak them. In the end, it'll all work out. But I mean, they are caused by the fact that we have this island configuration with the slip lane. So my question about that to staff, and I guess eventually I'm also curious what the other people on the commission think is, I mean, in light of the work that you have done since the last PC meeting, the additional feedback that you have received and the discussion that we're having right now, are you still confident that the slip lane configuration is actually the better design that we should go with?
Chris?
Yeah, I think, again, as I mentioned, last time, staff was, saw the pros and cons of both options. And we were, we were okay with both options. We could move forward with both options. Given looking at the I guess the full scope of all the considerations, if we had to choose one, we would have chosen alt 2, and I still believe that's true.
Okay. And that's true for everybody on the call. I don't know. People should feel free to speak up or not. I guess I'm genuinely wondering.
Okay, is that all you had, Harold, before we ask other folks their thoughts?
I have a couple additional
Sure,
things.
go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I think we briefly talked about that. So the staging area on the south side of the John Nolan Drive crossing, I think, yeah, we need to figure out a way to make that bigger, to have more space, because I mean, it's going to be wider, which helps to some extent, I think. I still think with a 90-degree angle, like you have a lot of space that's actually not useful. So thinking about how we can make that so that people waiting for the light do not block the path or have enough space there. That's just a minor thing that we can probably sort out. I noticed that compared to, did somebody want to respond?
I was just gonna say, yep, that's on our to-do list. I think we'll probably bow this out a little bit, make a little more space in between the path and the crossing, as well as widen maybe some additional storage space on each side.
Right, because I mean, people from the walkway also need to get across that crossing, and right now that you have that little buffer in between, so maybe that's where the two join or something like that. Yeah, I think that sounds good. We had a discussion about the width of the path along the causeway. I think, and I get the conflicts with trees and other things. I mean, I looked at NACDO guidance for two-way cycle track, which I guess this is not exactly, but I think it is in a way. They say recommended is 12 feet. I think that sounds better than 10 for me, and this may be still narrow enough to allow all of the other things. I know in the master plan process, noise was a big concern, and so having the ability to get trees in there and maintaining the distance between cars and people walking and biking, I think that's good. So yeah, finding that balance is good, but I think 10 feet, I mean, 10 feet is what it is right now, and it does not allow people to ride side by side. It creates conflicts between people riding at different speeds, even when nobody's walking. I mean, pedestrian traffic is often not very heavy, but it still seems too narrow. And so since we're not going to be able to change that in the next 50 years, most likely, it seems like erring toward 12 feet seems better. One difference I noted between what you presented last time and this drawing, it seems like you made the path approaches along North Shore Drive across the railroad tracks at 90 degrees, where previously they were kind of going through at an angle. I think the downside of that is, especially on the upper left corner, is that you now have that 90-degree bend in the turn right after the ramp to the crosswalk. Yeah, right there. I mean, guidance, I think, is that you don't need a 90 degrees to be safe for people to get across. I can't remember what the exact number is. It's something like 60. So I think that would be better to move back to something that's closer to the previous design, because yeah, with that 90-degree turn, most likely people will not be able to make that and veer into the other part, especially so close after the crossing. And if you have that bend later, by that point, people will have already dispersed at different speeds. So yeah, do you want to respond to that part? Or maybe there's another reason why you made it 90, why you made the 90-degree crossing.
So actually, one of the reasons why was the this closeness to the signal. The for railroad gates, they like the path to be closer to the flashing lights and gates, so that you're more aware of them. So, but we can look to try to straighten that out and not. So the reason we did is we kind of pushed it closer to the curb to be closer to the railroad gate, so that you know, that can warn people adequately that a train is coming.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe look if you can undo. I mean, clearly that's not how it is right now.
Nope.
So,
You're right.
yeah. Or maybe there can be some like middle ground for that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's what I had. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. One of the things that Robbie mentioned and Harold mentioned was making the path for bikes wider, and Harold's suggesting 12 feet. Chris, is that something that would work before we ask you what people think about that?
That's a pretty big change.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long stretch of pavement. So
in terms of widening it from 10, what would you suggest if it could be wider?
I think 12 would be the number. It's just whether or not, since we're already given that extra 6 feet of pavement, you know, it's just nothing we've shown anybody. That's not one of the alternatives, really. We did show a 14-foot path, but without a separated ped facility. Yeah. And then we also looked at I guess a 17-foot, you know, ped and bike facility that was tight to each other.
Yeah, I think that was our other option, where instead of having the buffer, which some of the waterfront plans kind of had that buffer, it was popular kind of with people to have that buffer. But that does tighten up the space a little bit if you kind of have it look more like the part of the path closer to Monona Terrace, where the separated walking path is right next to. But that, you know, obviously we're also trying to, like, you know, work within this waterfront master planning, which is ongoing with their new firm as well, to allow some future flexibility.
Yeah. So I guess the comment we're hearing is if it can be wider, it would be nice, but you're already got 16 feet combined now between ped and bike. So, and separated, which was I know that's certainly my preference to have them separated. And it seems like it's the safest route. So other comments on that, Robbie?
It just occurred to me that our overall amount of pavement might end up being the same, because we're taking a couple of feet off of the car lanes. So we may end up with the same amount of pavement because we're reducing the car lanes. And so maybe we could actually afford to give that back to the bike path. So that's just what I was going to throw out there.
Sure. Well, Chris, is that something that you can take a look at?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Robbie, is that all you had? Okay, Harold, go ahead.
Just a follow-up question to that. Renee, you mentioned the section closer to Monad Terrace where you have the separated walkway. How wide is the bike path section in that? Is that 10 feet?
And yeah,
Yeah, it's 10, yeah. But
So that's
obviously, when it's like right next to each other, people can use it more as a flex space than when it's
Yeah.
going to be separated. So that will feel a little bit different.
Right.
that's a good point.
That gets to like usable width versus actual width. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not comfortable with the 10 feet, I gotta say. Like imagine twice as many people biking, which I mean wouldn't even get us there at a super high mode share.
All right. Well, Chris, you're going to work on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want both feet, you can include that in the motion and we would work on that.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Anybody willing to make a motion? Harold?
Not making a motion. Can I get an explanation of what exactly, like we're approving the geometry, but there was also a lot of talk about, oh, we're going to work out the details. And I would like to have an understanding of what we are and like what can and cannot be changed down the road, or what's going to happen after we approve the geometry, and is it going to come back, and if what comes back seems not great, what happens then?
So typically we're approving that cross section, you know, the two lane widths, the you know, the median alignment, the path cross section, so that we can, you know, start to work on the detailed design and get those grades set. I'd say in the area of the intersection, we're kind of committing to the alt 2 format, and we can continue to make, you know, minor tweaks to the alternative, but kind of hoping we set that configuration.
And we did have a fairly significant discussion last time about the alternatives and decided on all 2. So at this point, I think the discussion on the table is the bike path in terms of width, and if we want to go with 12 foot, that it would be good to include that in the motion, unless people want to revisit the alternatives. Where we did have a pretty significant discussion about that last time. And could see the pros and cons of both, but decided to lean toward all 2 and chose that along with Chris and others. So additional comments, or is somebody ready to make a motion? And we can certainly have additional discussion about the motion as well. Robbie?
Okay, let me take a shot at this. So I will move approval of the geometrics with the recommendations that the width of the car lanes are reduced by, well, that engineering look at if the width of the car lanes can be reduced again, and that if that is the case, the bicycle section of the geometrics be widened. And if I can get a second, then we can go on from there.
Okay, let me just, so move approval of the geometrics with the recommendation that engineering review reducing the width of the car lanes and increasing the width of the bike lanes. Is that how you wanted to say it?
I think further reduce at least one of the car lanes. Yeah, further reduce.
Okay.
Because they did do a little bit of reduction down to 10 feet from 11. And if that is possible, add those additional 2 feet to the bicycle width.
Oh, could I ask the question, or is this not right at time?
Well, go ahead, because I think if you're okay with that, Robbie, we're still trying to work on the motion. Is it okay if we have some input from Chris?
Sure.
Yeah, I was just asking, are you asking us to look at the reduction that we made and apply that to the bikes, or are you asking to further reduce them? Because I'm not sure there's any further reduction that can between the 10 and 11. I don't think.
I understood that at least one of the car lanes could be possibly reduced to 10, so that you'd have a 10 and an 11.
They are
Yeah,
both.
what I
It's a
had in
10
my
and
notes,
11
Chris,
now.
was that we could go from 11 and 11 to 10 and 11.
Oh, are you talking about on North Shore?
Oh, what is it on? I thought that was what we had on John Nolan.
We have 10 and 11 now.
Oh, okay.
And I was saying I could do that on North Shore as well.
Okay,
You want to start that motion over?
sure.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, because it
No.
sounds like we were on a little bit different page in terms of the width of the car lanes.
Yeah, I withdraw that. Let me make another attempt.
Okay.
So I will move approval of the geometrics as presented, with the recommendation that the path, the bicycle portion of the path along John Nolan, be widened and the okay, I'll just leave it at that. I will leave it at that, and then if we can get a second, I can discuss my the other possible
Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
for discussion.
Darren, is that a second?
I second the motion.
Okay.
So if I
Okay.
can speak to it, I know that there was some question about the 90-degree turn just before the path crosses the railroad track in the North Shore intersection. And if someone wishes to suggest that be straightened out, I know that Harold was concerned about that. We can add that as a friendly amendment to the motion. But if everyone is happy with the answer they got, then we'll just leave it the way it is. So I will put my motion out there, and then if people want to make an amendment, we can do that.
Okay. What I have is Robbie moved approval of the geometrics as presented, with the recommendation that the bicycle portion of the path along John Nolan be widened. So, Chris, that gives you some flexibility in terms of how much wider. Did you wish to speak any more to the motion, Robbie?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was just hoping maybe to amend the motion to include what Robbie said, and then to add exploring narrowing the one lane on North Shore to 10 feet, if applicable.
That would be friendly.
So reducing the width of the car lane on, help me, Chris.
It would be to have 10 and 11-foot lanes on North Shore Drive.
Perfect.
Okay, just a second. So, so we would add, and having 10 and 11-foot width car lanes on North Shore Drive. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so, and Darren, since you said,
I think Darren also wanted to help straighten out that path. I don't
Straighten
know.
out. So that would be like straighten out the path in south.
well, hang on a sec. Darren, did you want to do that? I thought you just wanted to widen the car widths. Did you want to also straighten out the path, Darren?
I was just concentrating on the car width, but we can explore. I know we had conversation. I think it was Harold who had talked about straighten it out, but
well, let me repeat where I think we are at the moment, and then we'll see where we go from there. So move approval of the geometrics as presented with the recommendation that the bicycle portion of the path along John Nolan, I guess we should call it John Nolan Drive, be widened and recommend 10 and 11-foot width of the car lanes on North Shore Drive. Does that reflect where we're at? That
Yes.
Robbie and Darren, does that reflect your combined motion? Okay.
yes, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, Harold?
Sorry, I mute myself first. I'm going to make an amendment. I would like to amend that the islands, especially the island east of John Nolan Drive, or that the islands be made bigger, and that the approaches to the crosswalk across the railroad tracks be made more straight. Not very elegant, but
So Robbie, and this isn't exactly protocol, but we're kind of working on this motion together. So I noticed Steve's being quiet, so thanks, Steve. So what I heard you say was, and recommend that the islands be made bigger and the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight. Did I hear you right, Harold?
yeah, maybe we can change the language. The usable space of the islands for people walking and biking and rolling. Not the
How about
absolute
if we
size.
just, can we just say the usable space on the islands be made bigger?
Sure.
Okay, so the question is, Robbie and Darren, are you both comfortable with that being included in our motion, in your motion? And
That is friendly to the maker.
Darren?
Yes, I'm comfortable with it. Thank
Okay, I'm gonna try it again, and I'm now out of room, so I can switch to
can I
another
just
piece
ask-
of paper. Yeah. I was
Can I
gonna read
ask
it back,
Harold-
but go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
When you said approaches, are you thinking? I know we talked about this one. Are you thinking something along the same lines on the other side, or was it?
Yes.
It was plural, so I was assuming both sides. Is that right, Harold?
That is correct.
Okay.
One I think is more important than the other, but there doesn't seem to be. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm going to read it back and see where we're at. Move approval of the geometrics as presented with the recommendation that the bicycle portion of the path along John Nolan Drive be widened, and recommend 10 and 11-foot car lanes on North Shore Drive, and recommend that the usable space on the islands be made bigger and the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight. And we're not going to critique grammar at all. We just are going for clarity here. So Robbie, Darren, and Harold, does that reflect everything correctly? And Chris and Gretchen and Yang and Renee and everybody, does that? Okay,
I'm with you.
Robbie, go ahead.
If I could just say, I think that saying the approaches being straight is not necessarily clear because right now they're 90 degrees, which would seem to be straight. But I think what Harold's trying to get at is that we want the path to be straighter.
More
not-
direct? More direct?
Yeah, less of a turn in the path than is currently depicted.
So the approaches across the railroad tracks.
The
So
path
be more direct, or what?
The path be straighter as it approaches the railroad track. Is that what you're trying to get at, Harold?
I think that language is more confusing because right now
Okay,
they're straight across the railroad tracks.
So right now it says, recommend that the usable space on the islands be made bigger and the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight.
Okay.
In other words, doesn't have the turns.
We're talking about this area, right?
Yes.
You want
Yep.
you want a more straight approach into the crosswalk. You don't
Yes.
want a 90-degree turn right before it.
Correct.
Yep. I
Okay.
know what you mean. It's hard to say, but I know what you mean.
Okay. Bill?
Thanks. Thanks. I thought, I'm still a little bit confused about talking about it, but I thought Harold was trying to reduce the angle make it less than 90-degree crossing of the tracks. Is that right, Harold?
That is not the primary motivation. The primary motivation is to get rid of the 90-degree angle where Chris pointed with the mouse pointer, which is the
Okay.
result of going 90 degrees.
Oh, okay.
off the
All right.
path.
Then that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any comment about that. Then that's fine. Thanks.
Okay, Aaron?
I was going to suggest that the word we might be looking for is rather than straight, but maybe use the word skewed. Because that would insinuate that we're not going to be crossing at a 90-degree angle over the railroad tracks, but that the paths would be skewed over the tracks. Might actually help eliminate some words, maybe.
Well, right now it says that the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight. So what are you suggesting?
That we might want to use the word that the path should be skewed over the tracks. To me, that would insinuate that they do not want to be 90 degrees, but they would be at an angle, which I believe is what Harold is trying to get at.
I find that more confusing, but I'll let other people comment. Robbie?
I just want to point out that the angle at which the path crosses the tracks is less of an issue, as Harold pointed out, than the actual path of the path itself.
Right. He called it the approach, right?
Yes.
That's why it says the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight.
Yes.
But-
That I think is, now that I understand what he's, I think that makes more sense. So that we're not concentrating on the crossing itself. We're concentrating on the
Approaches.
path.
Yeah, and I think we might be able to straighten it out and still keep it 90. So like we shouldn't ask for a skewed crossing.
Right. Okay. So the language is okay. And you understand what it means, Chris.
I do. Yep.
Yeah. Harold?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think we're all on the same page. And so I think it's okay.
Okay. Aaron, your hand is still up. Did you have something more to say? Okay. All right. I'm going to try and read it one more time. So the motion is to move approval of the geometrics as presented with the recommendation that the bicycle portion of the path along John Nolan Drive be widened, and recommend a 10/11 foot width car lanes on North Shore Drive, and recommend that the usable space on the islands be made bigger and the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight. So further discussion. That was a really wonderful combination of effort to get that motion. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is very impressive. Thank you. I really appreciate the work that's being done here. This intersection just gives me heartburn still. So, I keep asking myself, would I feel safe crossing here? And definitely not by myself, at least not the first time until I learned it. And, throughout our discussion, I keep going back to, is Alt-4 better? I think we've done some things. Feels like there's some things here that have fixed some of Alt-2, but I really acknowledge and recognize that I don't have solutions. My mind doesn't come up with them, but this intersection I just have to say, it's still giving me just heartburn trying to think about what's it going to be like to cross here, especially for more vulnerable users. So, I don't know how to fix it. It's a tiny spit of land and we're trying to accomplish a whole lot of things, but I just need to name that it's still troubling me despite how much effort, really good effort, has gone into it.
Okay. Speaking as someone who moves much more slowly than she used to, I appreciate what you're saying, Denise. Harold, go ahead.
Chris, would you like to have something included about the storage space on the south approach crosswalk?
Sure, that'd be fine. Yep.
Oh boy.
Okay.
I mean, I'd do it either way, but you can do it.
I might as well, since we're okay.
Yep.
So I would propose the following amendment, all the things that we already have, and somebody help me. What do we call that? Is it storage space? No.
What would you call it, Chris?
Staging space.
Staging space. That the
Staging.
space.
How about that? Staging space, is that good?
Yeah. That the staging space at the south side.
It would be actually the east side.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. The staging space at the east side of the crossing of John Nolan Drive be made bigger.
Okay, and recommend the staging space at the east side of the crossing of John Nolan Drive be made bigger. Robbie and Darren, are you doing that still as further clarification that's acceptable to you both?
That is friendly to the maker.
Darren?
Yes, it works for me. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to read the whole thing one more time. Move approval of the geometrics as presented with the recommendation that the bicycle portion of the path along John Nolan Drive be widened, and recommend 10 and 11 foot width car lanes on North Shore Drive, and recommend the usable space in the islands be made bigger and the approaches across the railroad tracks be made more straight, and recommend the staging space at the east side of the crossing of John Nolan Drive be made bigger. Other comments? Chris and everybody on staff still okay with how we're describing everything?
Yes.
Okay. Additional discussion. A lot of really great input, everybody. Okay. There, I just read it. Do I need to read it again? Or is everybody good? Okay. Going to assume unanimous consent vote for our mega motion. unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain or have a roll call vote. Harold?
I would like to abstain.
Okay. Anybody else? Denise?
Yeah, and I'm gonna abstain as well.
Okay, let's see. We have just a second. I'm going to do my count here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see. So I believe we have 7 people here. Aiden, are you still here? Is that right? We have 7 members here at the moment. Did we lose Aiden? Am I counting right, Aiden, that we have, let's see, 1, 2, that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 of us here. Okay, so with 7, we need 4 votes to pass. So Harold abstains and Denise abstains. Then we would have 5 with me not voting. We would have 4 people voting. And so the motion would be carried. I would vote in favor if I needed to, but in any event, with 2 people abstaining, the motion carries. Okay. So I will work with Aiden to, I'll probably write, I may even just type that up right after the meeting just because, you know, so I can keep read my notes and make sure I got it all exactly right. Okay, thanks everybody. A lot of really good discussion. Chris, Gretchen, Renee, Yang, anybody have any other, Erin, anybody have any other questions before we move off of this really good discussion? Okay, thanks everybody. Now we're going to move on to item 7, which Bill asked, it pulled off the consent agenda. Creating and renumbering section 1005 related to public utility right-of-way occupancy permits. So Yang, did you want to maybe just give a brief update, or do we want to just go right to Bill's questions?
How about that? Actually, we'll ask one of my colleagues, Eric Halverson, to give a really quick summary. But this item is, for creating a new street occupancy permit program for utility companies, so that the city and the utility companies can do a better job correlating, the work that's happening, on our streets, and also in the meantime to allow the maximum amount of public safety and convenience. And I would like to introduce, my colleague Eric. So Eric is the traffic engineering development coordinator. So he manages our data mapping and permitting section. So I know that he and his teammates are heroes behind the scene, make a lot of things work that we don't have a chance to talk a lot about. So he was never here in this body talking to you, but I'm glad that he's here today, and I'll let him to give a brief summary, and I will help to answer questions as needed. So go ahead, Eric.
So this is basically related to folks, the utility companies who have their infrastructure, their private infrastructure in the public right of way. So this is our phone lines, our gas lines, fiber lines, small cell, all that kind of stuff. So back when I was trained in on how to do the occupancy permits, when it came to the utilities, it was, there's nothing we can do. We're not allowed to touch them. They have their stuff out here. If they're going to take 2 lanes on John Nolan during peak, we can ask them to move, but we don't have any real authority to
make them move. So as time went on, we started getting more and more issues. We asked the attorneys, and they said no, they actually are required to apply with the current occupancy standards. So we started reaching out to the utilities, and most of them we got to agree that it's actually in their best interest to take out these permits. MG&E, they ultimately said, no, we feel that the street occupancy permits are for constructing new buildings and construction purposes. Our infrastructure exists. We're using these to do maintenance. When we do our new construction, we're going to be using the street opening permits regulated by engineering. So trying to work through and respect MG&E's position, because they are right. Their infrastructure is in the right of way. It's a part of the public good and public interest. We want to make sure it's maintained in tip-top condition. And as they are workers in the right of way, much like our own utilities, the water utility, or say our own traffic engineering crews, they're used to working in the right of way on a daily basis, different than say your average construction company that may be local or maybe from somewhere else and not used to our urban environment or Madison's regulations or particular interest towards bike and pets. What we try to do is come on an agreement that would make sense for everybody. And what is kind of settled on is we're going to provide them with an annual permit, which grants them by right access to certain portions of the right of way that hopefully will be lower impact. And then the areas where we're having some of the more difficulty, because we have, like right now, we got BRT going on, we got all the construction that's going on. If you throw in a utility project on top of that, it quickly turns into no one can get there from here, which we're trying to avoid as transportation, right? So what this will also help us do is if they are still not able to follow some of these basic rules, kind of in the collectors and local areas, is we will have the standard enforcement that we always have with occupancy permits. But we can also say, if you continue to show that you cannot work on local collectors, we will remove your ability to will rescind your annual permit, and you'll be required for all activities in the right of way to comply with the standard street occupancy ordinances. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Questions?
Hey, Bill, you're the one who asked to pull it off, so I imagine you have some questions.
Yes, right. Thank you. My questions are really is, and I have no objection, and I like the thought of having this annual permit and understand of trying to manage because they're out there every day and so forth. But my questions were with what the other documents that were included, some of the public or traffic control measures, as well as the traffic control policies. Are those are existing?
We have like the MUTCD, and we also have a work zone safety guide, which is kind of a flip book that's looked at every few years or so.
And that's my question is what is that? Whose document is that? Is that the cities or is that the states? A state document.
It's a state document, but we also plan to, as we work through this, develop some other things to help add clarity. We would like to provide updates to that on an annual basis if needed.
Okay.
So one of the things that's been asked for this entire time and has always been asked for by developers is, well, can't you just provide us a list of all the traffic control we would ever need in the city? And I don't know, you walk around Madison, we have all these unique right-of-ways. You got driveways here. You have bike lanes in certain areas. You have just a whole slew of different things that trying to provide a handbook that would work for each and every situation would become impossible. But if we're finding that we have, 10 times a year, we get the same thing, well, then sure, then it makes sense for us to sketch something up, put something out there and publish it out for the utilities or for anyone who's going to get a street occupancy permit to help make sure that we're getting the best plans right away and not having to do the back and forth. Because that's the other thing I'm hoping with this is we won't have as many standard occupancy requests for review, and that'll free up my staff time to be able to go out in the field to see what's actually happening. Because right now we are complaint driven, and if there's no complaint, we know that there's utilities out there working right now to do a whole slew of different things, blocking sidewalks, blocking travel lanes, that we just never get to. So we're hoping this will also free up our time.
Okay, that's really my concern.
Yeah, so if it's okay, so Bill, so sorry to cut in. Yeah. So I think Eric was talking about the detailed traffic control plans and the standards, like MUTCD and the Wisconsin supplement, and also some standard drawings that the city provides. So Bill, I think maybe your question regarding the policy document attached to the legislature, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually from the city. That's a product of negotiation between the city staff and a few different departments, and also with representatives from the utility companies, namely MGE. So those are kind of agreed upon policy that we think we should go by. The reason why we didn't just put all that in the ordinance, but instead do a policy, that's because at the recommendation of the attorneys that it's a lot easier to update a policy than updating city ordinance.
Right. So I don't have any problem with that at all. And this and what you're doing with this, I think, makes perfect sense, and I'm in complete agreement with it. What my concern is that I don't think that policy has been addressed or looked at for quite some time, and needs some attention. The area that I'm really concerned about is vulnerable users, pedestrians. People that have challenges, and included in some of in that document, or in places in there, it said, well, and I think it's not just the utilities. I think it's our own contracts. Our city contracts are not really up to snuff with the best practices that is going on. There is a document called the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines put out by the U.S. Access Board, and that is going to be coming out very shortly. But even in the draft from 2011, I think the city as a whole, not just talking about utility contractors, but all contractors, city contracts, private developers work in the right-of-way, is not doing justice to the vulnerable users. And I really think that should require some attention. So I don't want to do that tonight with this, what we're doing here, because I think this can stand on its own, and it should go forward. But I really think that policy and the handbook and we know the MUTCD with the new edition is coming out very, very shortly. But even to the existing manual, it really doesn't do justice for the vulnerable users in any of the where we have to interfere with their pathways.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's
I'd be happy to go offline and come down and meet with you folks and go over some of my real concerns, because I think when PROAG comes out here very shortly, Access Board did approve it. All it needs now is just to go into the Federal Register, and it's going to be it's not the MUTCD changes will happen, but I think what you'll probably be seeing and hearing from your counterparts around the country. City of New York got sued. Chicago's most recent lawsuit from the Department of Justice regarding accessible traffic signals, as an example. But it's going to be more than that. And I think this is an area that is just going to, I think you might as well start looking at this and trying to get ahead of the curve on because
No, I think that'd be really helpful for myself and my staff.
Yeah.
And then anything that we could start exposing the contractors to now.
Yep.
Will help us in the long run. So
Sure.
that would be
It's
a
not just utilities, obviously, and that's what we're talking about tonight, but all contractors.
Everybody, including, and like you said, including city staff, right?
Yep, yeah, city,
We
yep.
can all do better.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Bill,
that-
for being.
that's definitely something like, we need to do in general. But that's also, one of the motivations that we really want to implement this permit program.
Yeah.
So that, these utilities and the contractors actually are buying by this, policy. And also for the major projects that will come to us, either with notification or supplemental traffic control plan,
Right.
or
Right.
apply a separate permit. And then one of some of the conditions you may notice in the policy is that we definitely pay a lot of special attention to vulnerable road users. To our shared use paths, to sidewalk. When you close those, those actually has more special considerations on that. And I think some contractors has more experience working in Madison. They understand the importance of maintaining the safety and convenience for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other road users, handicapped users. But other contractors out of town, we found that they really don't have any understanding of that. So we have been fighting some of the cases that happened in the past, and the things definitely improving. But we feel like formalize the requirement by using the permit program is going to be a win-win actually for everyone. So
okay, thanks. I noticed the one thing it included as an attachment was the traffic control policy, and it says approved by the Board of Public Works, but there was no date on that. Is that so? Does that exist today? Did the board approve?
I was at Board of Public Works before this, and they approved the ordinance change, but I don't know. I guess I have to go back to look to see specifically if they approved this. But this is the intent is to bring it back periodically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think needs some attention. So the policy. Okay.
And like I said, I would like to find better ways to deal with, like you're saying, vulnerable populations, but not just specifically with this small portion of the ordinance, but kind of all of our policies.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd like to work with you folks on that. Yeah.
I think that'd be great. Let's set that up.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks
thank
for
you.
offering. Thanks for offering to do that, Bill. Much appreciated. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate, Bill, you raising this issue. The list of issues that I've had with utilities and contractors and barriers to mobility and really, frankly, dangerous situations. There were barricades not placed at Johnson and Park when all that construction was happening, and I can't see across the street. And so I got the walk light, and as I'm approaching, I'm like, holy cow, there's no sidewalk and I'm gonna hit barricades. And then I missed the light cycle, so I snugged up behind a barrel to wait for the light cycle to change, but then I couldn't hear the signal because of the traffic. And finally, a student came and got me and walked me back across. And so, the barricades were put up shortly after that. Someone saw it and called it into 911. But it was an utterly terrifying experience. And I've encountered holes in the sidewalk that aren't coned properly, or maybe have cones but not close enough together that when I'm approaching, my cane goes right between those cones. I've had staff in tears trying to navigate utility construction out on East Wash when they've gotten off the bus, and I'm like, okay, let me walk you through how to file a complaint. So I appreciate the work that changes for tonight that we're looking at. And I too would volunteer to have a deeper discussion about this issue, because it is provides just significant barriers, especially in the downtown and Isthmus area where there's so much going on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah, well, thank you, Denise and Bill, both for agreeing to work with staff on this. Obviously, important issues. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, this is also a topic near and dear to my heart as I travel through the city. I see all kinds of stuff, and sometimes I remember to take a picture and actually report it. And I think part of the issue is that there's so much variability where, like, sometimes a lane of traffic is repurposed so that people can walk through, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the signage gets put at the beginning of the block, so at least you know that you have to cross here rather than walking half a block and then going over. And I've never been quite able to figure out, like, I mean, is that contractors not knowing what to do, or they're not being good guidance or policy around that? And I'm assuming it's probably a mix. So I think this is a worthwhile topic to bring up. And so as we get to the part of the meeting where we talk about suggestions for future agenda items, I think this should come back at some point. And yeah, I think there's policy change needed. Other cities, I think, have done a better job with this. So yeah.
And I think one thing that you're kind of saying that this policy will help with is kind of what I was touching on is my staff isn't really able to get out there because we have just a huge volume of, documentation to process. So if we have more time to get out, we will be able to address these things. Like Denise, I remember your situation, and a lot of that traffic control was changed without our knowledge. And we were explicitly actually recommending against some of these changes before they actually went into place. And once we actually got the call routed from 911, we tried to figure out who actually gave direction besides traffic engineering to alter traffic control in the right of way. But then how do we make this better as soon as we can? And I think it's just the same thing that you were talking about, Harold, is, we give them a plan, we approve it, and then they put up the opposite signs. They say left lane closed, supposed to be right lane closed. It's supposed to be a sidewalk closed ahead, and it's just sidewalk closed or whatever. And so we just don't have the staff time to get out there and be as meticulous as possible. So, sometimes it's like, well, at least they have a sign up, and then we got to go deal with this other fire over here. So hopefully this will at least free up some of our time with the utilities and saying that they can do some of these things without having to contact us. But then those areas where we know that there is higher order of concern, then we're able to address those directly with them and make sure that they have a good plan in place. And if they aren't able to do that consistently, then we can say, okay, you guys are showing you do not know how to appropriately work in the right of way in Madison. We are going to revoke your annual permit. You will go and take an occupancy permit for every single one. And then in the year's times, we will then discuss this again and see if you are now ready to do it the right way. So hopefully this actually starts addressing some of the concerns I'm hearing tonight, which I share, and I know my department shares.
So Eric, it sounds like this policy will allow you the time to address some of the other things that are being discussed.
This is the hope. I mean, we're not totally sure, because the other thing is we also know that because utilities have been getting away with, doing things on the fly, that we're not even really sure how much is happening out there, except for when we get those complaints. So if we can get utilities to at least comply and say that this ordinance applies to them wholly, and if they follow the rules, then they get to do a lot of stuff without talking to us. But then making sure that when they are going to deviate, when they're going to impact, the pedestrian walkways, our bike paths, multiple travel lanes during peak hours, those things that the citizens really feel on a day-to-day basis, they have to reach out to us and work with us. And hopefully with this, it'll become more of a partnership. And that's what we're hoping for here.
Yeah, maybe, also, by issuing annual permits, hopefully reducing, the workload, for everyone involved, including our staff, because we are, short-staffed, for what we have to handle. From 2012 to 2021, the occupancy permits that, Eric's group handled increased by 150%. So that, we used to, do 400 every year. In 2021, we're handling over 1,000 of them every year. And actually since that, it has increased as well as we, coming out of the pandemic.
Last year was nearly 1,500.
Now, right, 1,500. So that, but our staffing level hasn't really increased, for that. So, definitely there are lots of challenges. We need, all the help we can, including the permit program. And we also welcome, talking to experts like Bill and Delise, helping, get our staff more knowledgeable, accommodating, especially, our users have a special need, and how to work with these contractors, these utility companies on that. So we need to do whatever we can to, to handle all the challenges.
Hey, great discussion, which seems like it'll lead into another discussion for a future agenda topic when we get to that. Bill.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of the, I guess it's just this is an amendment change or an ordinance change, right?
Ordinance change. We're making a recommendation to the council. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Make a recommendation for approval.
Okay.
To have the utility permits on an annual basis.
Okay. Harold, is that a second?
Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion by Bill and a seconded by Harold to recommend approval to the Common Council of what was presented. Further discussion. Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. Thanks so much, Eric and Yang. Okay. So next we have announcements by the chair. So based on what Tom said earlier, it sounds like this will be the last meeting of the existing Transportation Commission, assuming everything goes as planned at the Common Council on June 20th. And if that is the case and the mayor signs the proceedings the next day, then the 621 TC meeting would be the new recreated TC. So I would, for my announcements, I would take this opportunity to thank everybody on the commission for all of their contributions, all of the excellent work that you do being prepared, the great attention to detail, the excellent feedback and interchange and respectful conversations that we have. The inclusive behavior is all just really outstanding and really appreciated. And although we don't have many staff left, I also would be very remiss if I did not thank staff. And I'm sure I speak for everybody on the commission because we can't do our work if we didn't have the support of staff and the really excellent support. So Yang and Aiden, please, Stephanie, Steve, please pass that along to everybody else who's not here, that everybody on the commission really appreciates all of the support that we've gotten from staff for so many, many things over the years, just too many to spend the time trying to account. So other comments from folks? Denise.
Yeah, and I also just really want to do a thank you to you for your leadership as chair.
Thank you.
We all know all the extra hours that go into that, and really working with everybody to seek clarity and being well prepared and providing really outstanding leadership. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I enjoy it. Yang.
Yeah, I want to second Delise on that. Thank you, Anne, for the great leadership for TC and the countless hours you put in. As the inaugural executive secretary for the commission, I know that, how much we work together, setting everything up, on the, TC handbook, on your work plan. I know how much thought you put into it. So thank you.
No, thanks so much, Ying.
Yeah, I want to thank, everyone on the commission for, spending also countless hours, looking into issues, providing us guidance on this, on many important issues. And over the last few years, this commission achieved a lot. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much. I just wanted to make a special shout out to Harold, just because I don't know if many people know it, but Harold and I worked a lot on the Safe Streets Madison program. How many meetings did we have, Harold? Just you and me working on. I'm working on the writing part, and Harold is giving me technical suggestions and countless hours of work that went on by many people. And I just mentioned Harold because I happen to know, because I worked with him behind the scenes on so many, but I know that's true of many, many other people as well, who have done, everybody on here has done work outside of the commission, working with staff, and, working with Yang or other people. Bill, I know you've done that, Denise, Darren, Pat, Robbie, everybody has done that. And that takes a special group of people who is not only willing to just come to the meetings, but spend their time beyond that. And that's just a real great level of caring and quite a contribution. So thanks to everybody. Any other comments on under announcements? Okay, then in terms of future agenda topics, we won't, actually, I'm just going to mention that Aiden and I are going to have to work really hard on the minutes because we won't have an existing TC meeting to approve the minutes. So thank heavens we have the recording to go back to look at that. But between the two of us, we've been taking really good notes. But I want to focus back on the issue that we were discussing when we were talking about the change in the regulations regarding utility right-of-way occupancy permits. I heard us talking about policies to address issues for vulnerable users during construction. Now, is that the way to say it, Bill? Is there a better way to say it?
I just think that the traffic control policy should be of interest to the Transportation Commission, not just the Board of Public Works, and so that existing policy should be put on our agenda for the future.
Okay,
future
how about,
discussion.
because I'm just writing something here, because there was a lot of discussion tonight.
For updating that document.
Yeah.
For updating that document. Yeah.
How about if we say updated traffic control policy should be reviewed by the Transportation Commission, especially with regard to issues related to vulnerable users.
Yes.
I just heard so much conversation about that. Does that encompass what we were talking about tonight? I'm just going to read it one more time. Updated traffic control policy should be reviewed by the Transportation Commission, especially with regard to issues related to vulnerable users.
That covers it. I think the question, maybe this is to Yang, is that a Board of Public Works document?
No, it's not actually. It's a document, came up by.
So it's just as much our jurisdiction as the Board of Public Works.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
traffic engineering. Yeah, it's produced by traffic engineering.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And but we did involve quite a few different people in the city. Another main contributor is the previous city engineer, Rob Phillips, was on the team. And our city attorney, Doran Visti, is one of the main authors on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and also lots of input, from our utility partners as well. So it's a brand new document, and we try to pack in as much consideration for vulnerable users as possible. But I think there's definitely room to improve. The idea, why we kind of position it as a policy instead of a ordinance, is that we know it's not perfect, and we want to try a little bit in the program, and we may come back to update that. And I think when we do an update, we'll have more experience. I'll definitely take a note, and we'll bring that to TC, for review, in addition to Board Public Works.
Great, thank you.
So Yang, so we probably shouldn't say updated traffic control policy. Should we just say traffic control policy should be reviewed by TC, especially with regard to issues related to vulnerable users?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been reviewed by the Transportation Commission.
Yeah. So these right now, they see the opportunity to review that. It's new for BPW as well as for TC. But I think I would suggest that we staff actually put in a lot of thought in it. We actually worked on this for a month, actually for a few years.
Wow.
Trying to come up with something that both the city and utility company will feel comfortable about it. We all feel realistic that this something actually can be implemented and can get some of the key things that both sides really want. So that's from many meetings, involving quite a few different people. So I think it's definitely something that put together very thoughtfully. But I definitely think it's not perfect. So I would say let's let us implement the program starting from August and see how it works, and we'll bring it back to TC or BPW for updates, without needing changing the ordinance. So so we I think it makes a lot of sense, and I definitely we'll make a note that we're going to bring it back to TC on this.
Okay, I'll write something up, Yang, and just send it to you to make sure that I get it worded correctly, so that we can pass it. So we can pass it on to for the new recreated TC.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Bill, did you have something else to add to the list of future agenda topics? Nope. Anybody have any other future agenda topics to add? Harold?
Is it my imagination, or did we used to have, I see that the Transportation Department has already submitted their budget request, and I think in the past we have received update on the budget requests from the department.
That was the purview of the Transportation Policy and Planning Board.
I guess I watched their meeting.
Who has not met since the merged TC was approved. So that would be the purview of the recreated TC. That would be in the ordinance that the policy, the budgets for transportation would go to the recreated TC.
Okay, well, we can share the notes with whoever is going to be on there. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, other items. Okay. All right. So who wants to make the motion to adjourn our last existing TC meeting? Aaron.
I move to adjourn.
And Robbie is going to second that motion. And I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote and again say thanks so much to everybody. Really awesome group of people. So see you all soon. Thanks.